Hello, everyone. Let me just make sure I get my video right here. Can you see me okay, everybody? Just making sure. Because for some reason my window got all small on me, so I just want to make sure I'm looking at myself right. Here we go. Oh no. Okay, see we have a couple more people joining us. There's a chat box as well. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. If anybody could type in or chime in to make sure that you can hear me okay and that you can see me okay. And I still have to train myself to actually look at the camera and not my laptop. So if you catch me looking down, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just not used to doing these Zooms. This is only about the fourth one that I've done. But my name's Setala, and I'm just going to type here too to make sure. Say, can you hear me okay? See if anybody responds back. But I see we have Ashley, someone named FM on the call, and Athena, so welcome. We have quite a few more people sign up, so we may have people trickling in, but before we really get into everything, I just want to make sure you can hear me okay. I'm also recording this, so if you signed up through the registration link, sometime tomorrow, I'm going to be uploading this to YouTube on an unlisted channel, and you'll be able to watch the replay. So you have that as well. Now we have somebody else, perfect. So Ashley, thank you for confirming you can hear me okay. So hello everyone, my name's Setala, and I call myself, where I go by the Sonic Shaman. I am known in the Cleveland area for combining Peruvian ceremony along with sound healing, and I use all kinds of different things from crystal bowls. So I brought a little example of some things. We have gongs, chimes, but the first thing that I learned, and in my opinion, one of the best things to start with is tuning forks. I have hundreds of tuning forks, as you can see behind me, and every month I pick one kind of set to kind of go over and tell you a little bit about how you can use it, basic information, but also to open it up for any questions for anything. So there's no question off limits. I try to focus on tuning forks mainly because getting into sound healing, you can pick these up, you can take them anywhere. They don't break like crystal bowls. They are easily transportable. And each set has its different niches that it's really good for. And the first couple Zooms that we did, and we're kind of finishing up with the set, is the Solar Harmonics set. Dr. John Boyu, which I'll show you the book, this is called Human Tuning. You can get this on Amazon or his website, biosonics.com. I used to carry them, I just haven't gotten an order in for a while, but you can order them directly from John or from Amazon. And by far, it's the single best book that goes over solar harmonic spectrum. It goes over Fibonacci, which we're going to touch on today. It goes over osteophonic forks. Osteophonic means weighted. It's just a fancy word. It means to vibrate bone. Those are the ones that you activate, and then you can place on points on the body for different effects. If you have any weighted forks at all, another book you definitely want to invest in is called Potent Points. It's all different acupuncture points, so you can look up pretty much anything from headaches to sciatica, and it gives you the specific points you can apply the stem of the fork to for whatever you're working on. Just a personal story of an amazing success with this. After our second child rather, my son Oliver was born, my wife had terrible sciatica, and about a 20-minute session just using one osteophonic fork hit all the pressure points for sciatica, and she's never had the pain again. So great testament as to that. And so any client that you have, whether it's a headache, hearing problems, whatever the case is. I recently had a client with hearing loss in one ear, and we used the acupressure points for hearing problems. And at the end, they couldn't hear fully, but they actually could hear the tuning fork tone out of the one ear just slightly, and their hearing has been improving. So just a great, if you had to pick one fork that could change the world, pick one osteophonic fork, either 128 cycles per second, which is the frequency based on the ionosphere of the Earth, and the ionosphere, rather, it's based on the Schumann resonance, or 136.1, that's the Ohm fork. Either one doesn't matter, as long as you're getting that vibration and going through the pressure points. One of those two forks would serve you well to get. But the basic thing that I want to go over today is kind of a recap of the solar harmonic set. The way that the two forks that you start with in solar harmonic, it's called the perfect fifth. And this is all to tell you a little bit about Dr. John Boyu. I got to train with him personally at his home in New York. I think it was New York. It's by Woodstock. I forget now. I think it was in New York where his house was. But it was like a 3-day immersion, and the man blew me away, because up until that point, tuning forks had all been kind of all energetically based for me. I had gotten into it because of the solar it's called Soma Energetics. They have the color tuning forks that are all the different colors of the chakras. And I got it because it, you know, of course that balances the chakras. But my problem was in my area, I had all kinds of people who they couldn't wrap their head around the metaphysics of it. And I decided, well, I needed to have more training around the science behind the sound. And he's a clinical psychiatrist who happened to be a musician rather. And one day he had a friend at a university that had access to an anechoic chamber, and he just wanted to do an experiment to see if he got access to this anechoic chamber, he could listen and hear the frequencies of his own body. Someone else had done this, and I forget the book that it was referenced in, but they heard two distinct tones. One of it was the actual blood going through the body, and the other one was a high-pitched noise, which was the nervous system. And he had this theory that the human body could be tuned just like an instrument, hence the name of his book, Human Tuning. And so he was all excited to test this theory. So he gets in his car, he runs out to get tuning forks. And at the time, they weren't nearly as accessible as they are today in terms of all the frequencies. Really, you just had a tuning forks that were a set tone for musicians to tune their instruments. So he got an A440 probably. I'm not sure exactly the frequency. And he's on his way back to the university or whatnot, and he gets pulled over by a state trooper. And the trooper sees the tuning fork on his dashboard, not dashboard, but the side seat. He's like, oh, what's that for? And John told him about what his theory was and what he was doing. And the trooper says, come with me. And John's thinking, oh my gosh, are these tuning forks illegal? Am I going to get arrested for tuning forks? This is insane. Goes back to the police officer's car, and the officer shows him a little fork about this size. And he says, do you know what this is for? And he's like, well, I don't know. It's a small fork, so probably makes a real high pitch. And he said that the fork was what they would ring to calibrate the radar guns. And the officer had noticed that when he would activate the fork, hopefully you can hear it a little bit, when he activated the fork to calibrate the radar gun, he could look at a car and know exactly how fast it was going, and then tag the car and confirm it. So he would just have a knowing, hey, that car is going 78 miles per hour, and the radar gun would confirm. And for John, that was Spirit's way of showing him that what he was onto something, that the human body could be tuned. That the officer, just by coming into the sympathetic resonance of that radar fork, was able to tune in and be able to tell how fast the cars are going. So long story short, John still got the speeding ticket, but the officer a couple of days later sent him the information of where they ordered their tuning forks from. And to this day, Biosonics, that they still use the same manufacturer. I personally carry MetaVibe. I started with Biosonics. If you go to my website, holistichealthandhealing.net, click the store button, all the forks that I carry are MetaVibe. MetaVibe forks are also made in the United States. John's forks are made in the United States. I have this theory that maybe he has MetaVibe make them also, but he just has his own blank. I can't prove it. He will neither confirm or deny, but I have a feeling that it's MetaVibe creating all of them, and they just have a different blank. The main difference, if you ever get a Biosonic fork versus one of my forks, you can see the example here. The MetaVibe forks all have a really long stem, and the Biosonic forks have a shorter stem. So they're virtually identical. They're both machined. They're not cast. You want to be careful when you're looking to get into forks. I would avoid, and this is based on sorry for the noise, personal experience. The ones from India, and I have a couple of those forks. This is an Ohm fork. You might be able to tell if I hold it up close, it's a cast material. So it has like more of a texture. And what I find is though that the fundamental tone is right on the money, like it would be if it's a 440 or if it's a 256 for C or whatnot, the tone itself is fine. What happens though is the tone doesn't last as long. So you find yourself activating the fork more frequently. And when you're using multiple forks combined, they have less overtones. And overtones is really where the magic happens as a sound healing, because it's not so much the fundamental tone is important for bringing energy centers or organs into sympathetic resonance, but the real magic is in the harmonics. It's when the sound interactions are creating thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of still points in your body called nodes. That's when two sound waves cross, it creates a node. In that node, in that still space, the water molecules of your body, if you ever Google acoustic levitation, they'll show you how they can levitate water, and the water in those nodes, based on the harmonics, will start spinning and do all kinds of different pointed shapes, 16-pointed stars, 10-pointed stars. So really the magic is the sacred geometry that's occurring in the water molecules of your body. And all that is based on the overtones. So it's real important, whatever fork you choose, machined I have found personally end up giving you better overtones overall. And the cast ones they're good for accuracy. If you're just doing like a weighted fork, they may be fine, but anything unweighted where you're really looking to get the overtones, for me, they just kind of fall flat. And at any time as I'm talking, if you have questions, you can type them in the chat box, or you feel free to chime in. You can take yourself off of mute or turn your video on if you wanted to ask a question. Don't feel hesitant to stop me or something percolates, because there's no time like the present if a question comes up. It's not an interruption. That's the purpose of these, because I like to just get the information out. And even if it's not about the forks that we're talking about, it can be about anything sound related or whatnot. So the solar harmonic set, the reason I like that to recommend for people to begin with is you can start with 2 forks, because a lot of people don't know sound healing's for them. You can start with 2 forks. It's on my website, or you can get them from John or wherever. And it's called the perfect fifth, and you can just use the 2 together. I don't know if you can see my knee here, but you basically just do a light knee tap, and that's just, you can't even hear it on the camera now probably, but you can hear, I hope you can hear it a little bit, but it's just a real light tone just from doing a light tap on the knee. I see a lot of people at holistic fairs, they just have the forks and they crack them together. I call it killing the forks. Everybody in the whole room cringes. But if you get them going and you want the overtones, all you have to do is lightly tap right on the 90-degree angle. Get them going, lightly tap like a little trampoline, and you get a real clean tone. And then as you start moving the forks, the overtones just kind of come out of that. And you'll notice that when you first start working on a person, the forks might not last as long. The tones will go quickly, and then as you continue to work with them, they last longer and longer, and you'll find that the overtones continue to build as you balance a person. John would say that this is all you need, this and 1 osteophonic fork, that's all you need for healing. Everything else is an option. I like the forks, so I find that they all have their niches. And the way I like to describe it is everybody can throw a baseball. Not everybody can throw a baseball 100 miles per hour and hit a little square this big. So though this may be all you need, and you can balance any chakras with it or anything else, if someone has organ issues, the organ set might be better. Barbara Hill did a lot of work, figured out the healthy frequency of organs, and you can use organ frequencies to help bring organs back into sympathetic resonance. Of course, that being said, I'll say my disclosure. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not claiming to treat, diagnose, or cure any disease. But that's the perfect fifth. And the way that you can also do it is go to a hardware store, get a couple O-rings, and you can actually have it so they'll act like little pendulums in your hand, so they won't fall off. You have a little bit of a grip. And then you can just work on the person. If you're going up and down the back of the person, if they were like sitting, you can just go around and you can just basically ask as a pendulum as the chakra balance, and you can just go, and when you find one that's a little bit out of balance, you work on it a little bit more. Intention is basically what you're telling the fork what its job is. Your job is to balance the chakras. Your job is to do whatever. Same way that American folk magic would use different ingredients. You're programming each ingredient with what its job is. Same thing with forks. Though this particular one is really good for balancing the nervous system. And if you get his book, each interval he has found through his studies that have all different effects. I'll just show you the picture of what you can expect if you were to get the book. But basically, each little interval, he has different protocols. So you always start with C256, which is the longer fork. And the whole set is C256 through 512. So that's 1 octave of C's and then all the notes in between. So you have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So it's 1 octave. And then here, there's like protocols for nervous system balancing. You use the C in one hand and then the G, F, A, G. So you would hold all the forks in one hand and you just tap them in that order. But I'm more of an intuitive healer. I can tell you, I don't really follow the book. It was really great when I started. But if you are always working on yourself and you are intuitive and you follow the energy, you can just pick which fork shine to you. That's how I describe it. You'll just notice that I'm noticing one fork more than the other. And those are the forks that use. And I always start each healing just asking, what vibration does this person need? What can I be a contribution of that would be for their highest and best and for the biggest contribution to the being in the body? Okay, so that's a little bit on that. So that's a perfect fifth. You can start with that. And then if you decided that you like the set, you can get the whole thing, which there's upgrades on my site. And let me just show you how you would do that then. So if you were picking out just a couple forks, if there was out of the 8 forks, you would just pick whatever ones were shining to, or you can follow a protocol in the book. And then you would just activate your C fork on your knee, because I always like having one fork going. It just seems that they activate differently and you get a little bit of different notes. And then you just tap it right on the right angles. And then you would just work that in the energy field and just follow the energy. So not hard at all. If you, anybody do anybody, I can't talk. Does anybody on the call tonight already work with tuning forks? Do you have particular sets that you like to use? You can type in or chime in. I have a lot of shy people tonight. The last call, I had people always talking. So, but either way. So that's the solar harmonic set. And that set was based on the Schumann resonance. That's what he wanted to pick when he started, which was at the time it fluctuated, but it was around 8 cycles per second. Recently, it's kind of peaked. It's been tracked, I think, even higher than 14 or even 20 cycles per second, almost coming into the audible range for humans. And so it's been on the move, but that's what the set was originally based on, was this 8 cycle fundamental. And so if you double 8, the next octave is 16. You double 16, the next octave is 32, which is this guy. This is an osteophonic fork, 32 cycles per second. It is the lowest auto fork. And you just with this one, if you tap it here, you're going to clink the weights together. So tap it a little bit further down, you'll get a good vibe off of that. And you actually run the lymphatic system with that, just like right above the skin or whatnot. And you would just follow the lymphatic or follow the meridians, depending what you're doing. You double 32, you get 64, which is the next fork. This is the next osteophonic fork, 64 cycles per second. You can use it with the potent pressure points, or again, follow the energy. The next one we already went over, which is the 128, which I seem to have lost. Not sure what I did with it. But that's all right. And then you double the 128, you get the C256, which is that first C note in the solar harmonic spectrum. You double that to 512. That's the 1 octave up, and that's where the main set is, C through C. And then if you keep going all the way up to 4096, we get to the next one, which is this crystal tuner, 4096 Hertz. And this is like energetic sage. In fact, if you've ever looked at, if you've seen the Ghostbusters movie, Peter Venkman, he's playing the top 2 notes of the piano. It's like ding, 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 right? And he's like, they hate this. Happens to be 4096 Hertz. The guy who played Ray in that movie actually grew up in development circles and all kinds of things. So he kind of maybe knew what he was doing with that. Maybe it wasn't just a coincidence, or maybe it was. But with the crystal tuner, you activate it off a crystal, pick whatever crystal you like. You activate that, and then you can use that to break up energy blockages. So if you're doing that pendulum technique with the perfect fifth, and you find a solar plexus, or solar plexus is a big one for our empaths. You find a whole bunch of energy that's stopped in a certain place. You can stop, grab a crystal tuner, tap the crystal tuner, and then you focus on that spot a little bit more to help break up that energy. And you'll notice that where you find you need to do that, the tuning forks won't last very long. The tone just kind of dies out. And then after you do a crystal tuner and you go back with the perfect fifth, you'll notice all of a sudden the tones last a lot longer. And you can do a whole healing session with just a crystal tuner, perfect fifth, and that's it. Now, if you wanted, they also have these 2 forks. He calls this the angel tuner set. And these are on my website as well. You hold the crystal tuner in one hand. Crystal tuner is sold separately. You can also buy the 3-pack, which they call the angel tuner. They call it Jacob's ladder, and it is getting into the angelic realms. And again, you just want to tap it right on the 90-degree angles. Don't hit it on the flats. You'll know if you do, because it's like clank, and nobody likes that sound. So you hit it real lightly on the corners, and then you use that in the person's field. And I find that is a great energy to help the person tap into their guides and angels and that type of thing. Also really good to end a session with. Between that and using an Ohm tuner, what I like doing is taking the like 2 Ohm forks or 2 128 forks that are weighted, and I activate them and I place them on the person's shoulder. And I don't know what I do with my Ohm tuner, wherever it is, but the height is perfect. So they're hearing the weight right in their ear, and they're also feeling the vibration going down through their shoulders. And I find it's a great way to ground people. Or sometimes I'll do it at the feet. Every client's different. Sometimes I don't even ground them. You just follow the energy and see where it takes you. So we've covered the perfect fifth, a little bit about the whole set. We've covered the crystal tuner, the angel tuner. The final part of the solar harmonic set that I love is that you can bridge into a whole nother set. So there's a set called Fibonacci, and Fibonacci is that spiral that goes within. And I find that that set in particular works really great with people who have addictions, and I kind of visualize that these microtones that are created from the set, they create all these microharmonics, and it gets the person in touch with their own divine source or their seed of potential or whatever you want to call it. people who have addiction seem to get like this lifeline to something that helps them pull themselves out of it. And I've had lots of clients that have had success with that. So if you have someone with a lot of addiction issues and things, I do find that they do need to come willingly. Like if someone's just dragging them, then they're usually so resistant to the healing that nothing can go through. But there's a group of people that they know they need help and they just keep falling back into it. Those are the people that are great candidates to have a Fibonacci session and see how it goes. Or if you do need to be subtle about it, there's an artist named Jill Matson. She is out of Pennsylvania, close to, not Casadega, where is it? I can't think of the name of it. It's Chautauqua. She lives right outside Chautauqua in New York, not Pennsylvania. She just moved from Pennsylvania. So she's a musical artist, and she takes all these tones, solfeggio, reverse solfeggio, Fibonacci, planet tones, organ tones, and she makes these CDs out of them. And she has one CD called Paint Your Soul. And that CD uses solfeggio, reverse solfeggio, and Fibonacci. So if you ever had someone that has someone that they're worried about because of addiction and they can't get them to agree to go somewhere, you could always play that in the background and they're going to be subtly getting some of the effects of that. So the way that the Fibonacci works is it's based on ratios, and there's 4 forks, the C, the G, the A, and the C of the solar harmonic set that all overlap with Fibonacci. And then after that, it goes based on ratios. So there's 4 more forks. So if you already had the solar harmonic set, you could just buy the Fibonacci upgrade, get 4 more forks, and you have 2 complete sets of tuning forks. So it's a great set. You can kind of progress and grow into it as your needs change as a practitioner, or to use it on yourself, or just because they're fun. And the way that I use it is I hold, and it's hard to do for some people, but I hold all 7 forks in one hand, and then I have the 1 activator fork in the other hand, and I'll just play them intuitively. But in the book, if you wanted to experiment with it, the way to do it is just for yourself, sit down just with the C256. You would activate that, just listen to that 1 tone by itself. And this is also a great way to anchor the tone. So if you're doing that, this is the G fork. Let's see, where's the C fork? See, I almost need a helper just to keep my forks in order so I don't get lost. Here it is. Here's a C256. So if you get that started and just listen, and hum the tone, you're actually taking that tone inside of you. You're helping to anchor it. And then even when you don't have the fork, if you know someone needs that frequency, you could actually tone that out. Ah, and you're giving that same fundamental tone. But you kind of see what that tone does for you. And then you would start with the next one. So this one would be C and G for the next one of Fibonacci. If I can find where I put them. Oh, it's over here. See, I have forks everywhere. C and G. So you would start with both of those, and then you're hearing the interval. Now, once you start working with 2 forks, the other thing that happens is your brain is also going to pick up on the differences between the two. So 256 and G384, the difference is 128. So your brain is going to perceive the difference, and that's how binaural beats work if you're familiar with brain tuners. So if you have like a 250 note and a 255 note, your brain will perceive the difference of 5, and that's how they can shift brain frequencies to put you in alpha, theta, delta, beta, all those things. So when you're starting to deal with intervals, your brain is also going to be perceiving, if you're holding it right by the ears, the difference in the 2 tones, because it cancels out the like tones, and that you get, I call it like the wah-wah effect. Your brain almost feels like this beat, like whoa, especially with the closer frequencies. But you just see what that does for you, and you hum that tone to kind of anchor it in, and so you can become aware of it as a healer. Because sometimes if you have a client and you don't have a fork, but you know this is the frequency they need, your voice is a great powerful tool as a sound healer. Why not use it? And get over your shyness. It's okay. No one's going to laugh at you if you're helping them. So that's that one. So then you would keep the C and go to the next one, which would be A, and you do the same thing. And you just anchor them all, see how they feel for you. And then eventually you would take all of them and put them together, which I'll do for you. I'll look like Edward tuning fork hands here. But we have the G, the A, no, we don't want the D. Here's the other C. And then this is 5/8 because it all goes by ratio once we get to this point. 9/13, 13/21, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm missing one. Where's my missing one? Oh, 21/34. So it's not easy, but it can be done. You can hold all the forks in one hand. Just maybe have to work out a little bit. and then activate the one on the knee, because again, I just feel that it activates better when it's already vibrating a little bit, and then just bounce it off the corners. And now these ones, as the ratio goes in, it's going inward, and it gets more and more microtonal because the difference is only a couple hertz. So you'll hear this real, it's almost like the tone will come out of the tones, and you probably can't hear it with a webcam speaker, but if you were using it, you'll hear like this high vibration. It's like, woo, and it just takes off, and it takes out an energy in and of itself. And I just play it intuitively. So if I was working with a client like that, I might do my general thing first. And when I get to the Fibonacci part, I might just start 2, and I'll go over the energy field. And then as I'm led to, I'll do different combinations, and I do it all intuitively. But if you read the book, you can look at what each interval is supposed to do, and do a more organized protocol, but it's not nearly as much fun as just winging it, in my opinion. So that's the Fibonacci. Any questions so far? Because tuning fork wise, we've covered kind of a recap of the forks of everything here, and then ending with the Fibonacci, and the rest is going to be just kind of total ab lib, or seeing where you want to go with questions about tuning forks or anything sound related or anything healing related. It doesn't have to be just sound. So I'll let you guys take a moment to ask questions or offer comments. And feel free, you can take yourself off of mute if you actually want to talk, or put video on if you want to make faces at us. Let's see, when you hold the forks, do you make sure they don't touch? When I'm holding all the forks in the one hand, I do hold them in a way that they don't touch, because otherwise, if they did touch, when they're touching, it will cancel the vibration. They'll stop oscillating much more quickly. So you have to hold them in a way that they're all going different directions. So you can usually do 1, 2, and then if you do them at angles, 1 here, 1 here, you could do 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. I can almost get a whole set of planet forks in my hand, and that's like 10 forks. And it's not easy, but you can do it if you position them and they're facing all the right directions. The real key though is when you activate it, always do it off the right angle, not like that, not like that, and try to activate it first on the kneecaps if you can, because it just gives a much cleaner tone than starting it from scratch. Because imagine someone bouncing on a trampoline. When they first get on the trampoline, they bounce once. It doesn't get nearly effect as if that trampoline's already going, and they can go higher and higher. So the tones just respond differently. Let's see. Got it. Thanks. Cool. Let's see. Any other questions? Or I'll show you. This isn't tuning fork related, but this is really one of my favorite sound healing gizmos. This is called a crystal singing pyramid. I don't sell these because they're just very breakable, so I don't want to try shipping them. But if you Google them online, you can get them. I got mine through a company, through Alibaba or whatnot. But they're 99.9% crystal, and you just activate the sides, and then you can spin it over the person, and it creates just a ton of different harmonics that impact the person. I have this one, and I have a much larger one that isn't as good for trying to show on camera, just because it's not as manageable. But I find that these are great little things. I like ending the session with that, kind of feathering out the energy. And if you were to invest in a single crystal bowl, the one that I like the best are these handheld ones. It's just functional because you can go over the person. You can actually place it on the person and play it. And you just use a little suede mallet like that, activate it, and just you can hear the tone just on that, I hope. And they can get pretty intense. The more friction you apply, you'll get a hang of it, and then they do that. And I end sessions with that and doing chanting in Quechua, which is a South American dialect of all, like thanking all the elements, because I always open in ceremony and close with ceremony. So that's kind of the tool that I use at the end to thank all the spirits that I've worked with and to just kind of end the session. But what questions do you guys have? I'm sure that I must have prompted another question or two. If you do want to get an activator, just like you can get a dowel rod, and they have these little caps you can put on the end. Anything rubber like that, hockey puck works. Anything rubber you can just tap it on. But really the knee, if you're using your knee to activate it and it's hurting, you're hitting way too hard. It's just a very light tap just to barely get it started, and then you can start bouncing them off the forks. How many different bowls and forks do I use in a session? That is a loaded question. It could be 0 and it could be everything in my office. I really follow the energy. I have like a 24-inch and a 22-inch bowl, and usually I use those at least once. Every time I feel a blockage, I start those guys, and it just flushes the whole room, also with whatever the person's letting go of. But besides that, I almost always use the pyramids. I find that some of my clients, occasionally I'll find someone that is really more there for processing, and then I'll do access bars and run clearings. So that's just another healing modality. There's 32 points in the head. You apply your fingers on either side, it creates a bar of energy. That's where the name of the modality comes from, and it dissipates all the energies that hold limitations in place that prevents them from stepping into possibility. So for some people, I literally just hold their head for 90 minutes, and while I hit the different points, I'll ask them different clearings, and I'll run I'll do those things to help all reframe. And then on the next session, then I start with the sound work. But if someone comes in and they're really stuck in a certain point of view, I do that first because it creates a new possibility when I work with them in the future to get into the sound work and some of the shamanic work that I do. Because the shaman work is really where I have the most fun. I have my mace, I have all my sound tools, I'll do chanting, do Florida water, saging. A shaman is a showman. Some people really need the ceremony, because what I find is if someone's taken 20 years to screw themselves up in their mind, how could a healing in 30 seconds, or however long a healing is going to be, counteract 20 years worth of stuff? And some people just put so much value in having gotten there and having suffered to the point where they're finally ready to heal. And they have the same expectation that if it took me this long to get screwed up, it's going to take me this long to get fixed. And part of the shamanic work is when you're putting on a ceremony for somebody, it helps them get out of that space, and they feel something magical that they never felt before, and helps the brain let go of this idea that I need to work through all my shit in order to get better. And healing could be as instantaneous as a handshake, and it doesn't have to be long and involved. Let's see. Is the shaman work you do more sound-based? Not necessarily. I do a lot of soul retrieval. I use my mesa. The only actual sound work in the tradition that I've learned is in the opening ceremony, when you're doing it very officially. Every element has its own tone. So Mother Earth, for example, that's Pachamama, will be Pachamama. And each one of those too is a toning. Pachamama. Waira, the wind, Waira. So even the toning that are done in the ceremonies are all energetically based, and it's intended to balance an energy system called Nawis, which is not chakras. It's not even close to chakras. It's lenses of energy, like a camera lens would open and close. And they say that that is where you express energy out of and bring energy into your field. And the chakras would be more the energy distribution of the system. So for you empaths out there, don't block off your solar plexus. It's doing something to boost up. Shut down your lens. Close your navel. That's where that Maui is. So you would visualize that lens closing, so you're not pulling in all that stuff, but you don't want to like block your chakra or cut your chakra off, because that would be like stopping your heart from beating. Do the forks get out of tune from time to time? You read that you can adjust them by filing them. You could adjust them by filing them. I've never had one. I mean, if someone's really killing the forks and they're all dented, those are going to get more out of the fundamental tone. But if you're tapping them appropriately, like I've used my forks for a long time and I hardly have any divots or anything, they shouldn't be going out of tune like that. And if you really beat them up that much, it's probably good to buy a new fork. But if you were to file it, get a tester and make sure you're doing it. And if you needed to add something, then you're never going to get that back. If you can file down, that I guess that would be fine, but you can't add on. Some forks are adjustable, like the weighted forks. You could actually get an Allen key and adjust that and change the weight position to get different tones, but I've never felt the need to do that. If they're in extreme cold or extreme heat, temporarily they could be off, but they're going to come back. Yeah, but I haven't ever had a need to try to file them or anything like that, but technically you could. It would change the tone. It just would be such a... For me, I just don't have the mechanical capacity to sit there in a machine thing and do that and then test it. I'm not that handy when it comes to stuff like that. My office partner, Ryan, though, is like a design engineer. He probably could do it for me if it was ever needed. Any other questions? We still have some time, and we can go over too if there's a lot of questions. And if for anybody who's local, I don't know if you're aware, we have a new center in North Olmsted. So if you are local, come over, check it out. We have a practitioner room for rent. If you're a practitioner and need a spot to hang your hat, it's rented by the hour, so you can come in for that. We also have this amazing space that you can rent for workshops. I will show it to you. You can see it there. So we have, oh, there we go. We really put a lot of work into it, put in a really cool flooring and everything. And we have, oh, when do you use the gong? You know, what I love using the gong is I put it at the end of my table, and I'll put my didgeridoo up on the table as well, and I'll didge into them while I am hitting the gong. And so the kind of energetically what I'm visualizing is that the didgeridoo, all the vibrations that it's sending out, is loosening all the cellular memory and things that the person might be holding on to, and the gong is just flushing it out and taking it away. I put it in here because it just like looks cool for the picture, I thought. Oops, dropped the, anyway. But that's what I mainly use the gong for, is for that. And didgeridoos are great. The thing is, I haven't quite mastered circular breathing yet. So the gong also hides that, because every time I have to take a breath, I'm like, and then I can take a breath and keep going, because I haven't mastered the art of being able to exhale while I inhale. That's kind of you have to use the back pressure of your cheeks while you're exhaling, just from the air that's still there, while you take a quick breath, and then you keep going. I have another friend who can do it. It's really an art I have not mastered yet. What other questions about sound, shamanism, healing, anything? If anybody's in the Buffalo area, I'm going to be out at the Earth Spirit Expo next weekend. I'm going to be up that way. Or if you have any friends in Buffalo, tell them to come see me. I'll be doing a concert Friday night, and then taking sessions during the show both days, and then I'm ending on Sunday with a Power of Possibility class, which is an access class entitled Money's Not the Problem You Are. So we'll be doing that next Sunday as well. Do I use muscle test to decide what to use? I used to, but not so much anymore. Muscle testing is a great tool until you trust your knowing. If I ever was stuck, I would, but I also did it like this. Like, this is way more involved. You can use this finger as representing the arm you're pushing down on, this finger as the arm pushing down, and you can just kind of go over your forks and just kind of lightly, and you can feel where you get the right one. For me, it just pops out, and I know I need to use that. It shines to me like a spotlight is on it. But muscle testing is a great way to develop that ability to know what's shining to you, because eventually you won't need a muscle test anymore. Access bars. So access bars is a healing modality that was channeled by a guy named Gary Douglas, who's the founder of Access Consciousness. And it is 32 points on the head that all correlate to different things. So if you think of your computer with different folders, and each folder has a theme, each point on the head is a theme. So you have healing, you have control, you have money, you have time and space, communication, body, sexuality, happiness, joy, implant band, aging toaster, which is all the concepts you have around aging. And when you put the fingers on either side of the opposing points, so like the temple is literally the healing, so the healing temple, easy one to remember. You place your fingers on either side of that, it creates a bar of energy. And that bar of energy dissipates any thoughts, feelings, consideration, judgments you have around a certain thing. So money, for example, how many people have been taught that you have to work hard in order to get money? Or money is the root of all evil. And if you bought into the idea that money is the root of all evil, subconsciously might you be creating a space where you're limiting yourself and your potential and your abundance. So access bars would go in and all those places where we might be stuck, where we don't even know we're stuck. It would dissipate the things that are holding those limitations into place. And then it opens up new possibilities. So access bars is literally why we have the center now. We learned it by accident. One thing I do is I host classes and workshops, and I hosted a lady named Carol, and she was going to teach bars for me at our old Lakewood location, and I had accidentally double booked myself. And my friend Ryan, I said, hey, someone needs to be there that's on the lease, because it was from our landlord. Can you sit in on the class, because someone has to be present? So he brought his laptop, didn't have any interest in learning the bars. In fact, he knew Andrew Gardella from years ago at a show, and he heard the access clearing statement. He's like, that's a bunch of crap. That doesn't sound like anything I'm interested in. But when he got there for the class, Carol had an odd number of people and said, hey, Ryan, I have an odd number of people. Sit in on the class. I'll give you the certification, because it's hard to coach people's hand positions if you're on the table and you can't see where their hands are. So he took the class. It blew him away. He gave me a session. I woke up like an hour later drooling on myself, and I felt amazing. And I'm like, wow, that's great. I have to learn that. So we both ended up becoming bars facilitators. And then we started taking some of the other classes. In fact, we just hosted a 4-day foundation class. After the foundation class, everything started changing. We were looking just for a small office that was a little bit bigger than the one we had, that we could share more easily, and ended up with a space for a healing center, found an investor that helped us renovate the place. And now we have our own center. And everything was really changed in Access. And if you take one thing away from Access, besides bars, it's always being in the question and not the answer. Because when you find an answer, you stop looking. So you always ask another question once the universe presents to you something that you've said that you've desired or put out that you want to actualize. And the best question that we started asking was, what else is possible? And how does it get better than this? So every time we would double book, well, what else is possible? Well, we should get a bigger spot. Well, this is good, but is there something else? What else is possible? We kept following the energy, and boom, now we have a center. But had we found if we stopped at the first place we would have found, instead of asking what else is possible, we would have cut off the potential. So always ask that. Even if you just got the winning lottery ticket, ask, well, how does it get better than this? Not, wow, that's as good as it gets. Totally different energy. Sounds similar to acupressure points, where emphasis on beliefs. They don't correlate always to acupressure points. I did find that some of the points correlate to different things in IET, which is integrative energy therapy. But the actual points themselves, they don't necessarily correlate exactly to acupressure points. There may be some overlap. But you're right, it is based on beliefs, and the clearing statement that's taught is similar to NLP. I would call it an interrupt, because you pose a question to the person, and it's about them identifying the energy, and then you ask, will you destroy and uncreate it? And they'll say yes, and then you run the clearing statement, which we're not supposed to put on social media, because people just get asked questions about it that they rather not be asked on social media, I guess. But if you can go to accessconsciousness.com, check it out there. I think they even have one for the clearing statement, like the clearingstatement.com or something like that. And you can look up and see a little bit more on that. But basically, it's a whole bunch of short speak that all stands for different things. And it gets into the other than conscious. So this is NLP terminology I'm using now. So basically, you would present a question to someone, and then you would present an interrupt. And an interrupt is a line of words or something else, another stimulus that takes the brain out of its normal way to function and allows it to reprogram itself. So if you want to look at it from an NLP's perspective, EFT does the same thing, emotional freedom technique, because they have you do all the tapping, and then you'll ask the questions about how do you rate it, and then they'll do, like one lady I had with EFT, she would have you like hum the happy birthday song and move your eyes back and forth. So it's all something that it takes you out of the normal way that you process things and gives you a new possibility of how to re-anchor where you would go with that belief system. So that's Access bars in a nutshell. But there's a lot of videos on the Access site if you wanted to dive into it. And here's the real interesting thing about bars. There was a neuroscientist. If you Google Access bars neuroscientist, you'll find it. There was a medical convention. He actually invited Gary Douglas. Gary Douglas goes thinking he's about to get roasted. He has no idea what the guy invited him for, but he's assuming, because it's a medical doctor, a neuroscientist, and he was just invited to this medical conference. He's assuming that he's going to get up on stage and he's going to have to defend Access bars and everything else. And he goes, and the guy ends up praising Access. And they took, I'm going to get the medical terminology wrong probably, but they took a guy with 5 magnitude anxiety, and 5 magnitude is like this times this times this times this times this. It's not like this doubled, it's like, it's much exponentially larger. And in a 90-minute bar session, when they were doing, I think it's topographical brain mapping, they were able to show the person go from 5 magnitude anxiety to normal, what they would consider quote unquote normal. So he was blown away by it, but there hasn't been, other than that, any official studies that I know of that show the physiological impact of what bars can do. But what they say is if you have a bar session, in the best case scenario, your whole life changes. Worst case, you'll feel like you had a great massage. Any questions? Any more questions? A lot of great questions. I appreciate them. And I like going off tangent too and talking about other things. I've also been trained in a little bit of Lomi Lomi, EFT, NLP, Reiki, a couple different kinds of Reiki if you have questions about any of those things. And if not, we're right about time, but we can still, if there's any final questions, we can still address them. Wait to see if anybody types anything. So regeneration of DNA, I don't work with anything energetically. I do have DNA forks that I can use. For DNA stuff, there's a lady that's local called Mary Maynard. She is a RN who has, people go to see her as a medical intuitive, and she has a whole series on going into the molecules and changing DNA and stuff like that. So she would be a great resource. It's maryamaynard.com if you want to check out her website. And I'm going to forget the names. There's some sort of molecule. It's like one of the smallest proteins in the body that when it's folded, it causes disease. And I know one of the things she talks about and teaches is how to just go in and unfold those to eliminate disease. So very interesting work, but I don't work other than that with anything DNA related. In shamanism, there is one technique where we would call the mukis, which are these little kind of nanobot-like being that would be in us because we're all comprised of this animating essence, and part of that is these beings called mukis in that South American tradition. And you activate that, and you'll ask them to do things on your behalf. So if I had someone with a DNA issue, I would probably go the shamanic route personally because I don't have the knowledge base for the regenerative DNA that you mentioned. But Mary Maynard, if you're interested in, check out her class. I think she's even offering them streaming now. So if you're not local, you could always catch her classes online. She might even eventually do them here. We just weren't quite set up for the streaming yet, but we're getting there. We just have a few more pieces of equipment to get. And David, forget his last name, the guy for Soma Energetics, he also has RNA forks. I don't know the frequencies of those. The DNA forks are on my website. RNA, I guess he considers them proprietary, and I couldn't get the frequencies. So if I ever find them, I can offer them, or if you know them, you can order them as custom forks on my site, and I can get those for you as well. In fact, mentioning custom forks, any frequency you ever want, almost anything I can make for you. And there's no crazy minimum order for custom forks. The one thing would be, let's see, and some of the sets I offer are also custom. I have a master set, which is something that we created and we're playing with. So it's 111, 222, 333. So it's all the master numbers 1 through 999, and then we started with 1111 2222. We were able to go all the way up to 7777, and that's just like a numerology based master set. Numerology, solfeggio frequencies are also numerology, really. If you ever look at the solar Soma energetic set, that set they call solfeggio, but really it's numerology because everything breaks down to a 3, 6, or 9, 3, 6, or 9, 3, 6, or 9, the whole set. And there's patterns of 3, 6, 9. So it's really numerology at its best. And Tesla even said if you understand the mysteries of 3, 6, 9, you would understand the whole meaning of the universe. So solfeggio, what they call solfeggio, is a great set if you ever want to take a look at it. But the original solfeggio was all a tonic note. They would meditate and figure out what's today's tonic note. And okay, it's going to be this. Now we're going to tune our instruments to that. So the true solfeggio would be different every day. And that's why it might have been solfeggio one day, but not the next day. So it's more of a numerology set. Another random tangent. You can tell I'm good at those. Any other questions, comments, suggestions? Was this helpful? I hope. Everybody stayed, so it must not have been not helpful. Or they just walked away and are cooking dinner. Very good, very informative. It's been very intriguing, great. Well, you have my contact information on the website. If you're local, the other thing I like to offer, I have on my website, actually I might need to add it back, but you can always come out to the office and play with the forks and see what set resonates with you. Because for me, I started with solfeggio, and then for me at the time, it really wasn't the best set. If I could go back, I probably would have started with a different one. So if you're feeling an inkling to get into sound, if you're local at all, stop in or do a Skype session, and I can play tones for you, and we can see what resonates with you and get the set that is calling to you where you're at right now. There's endless potential with all that, from planet forks to organ forks to meridian forks to Kabbalah forks. There's forks for everything. and I have almost all of them. Not quite everything, but I'm putting in an order and hoping to finish out everything that MetaVibe offers as a stock set, and then start getting more custom stuff. One thing I'm looking at getting, there was, I forget the date, just recently there was the Earth rang like a bell. There was the seismic monitors or whatnot found that the Earth made a series of distinct tones that just kind of resonated like it was a bell getting hit. And someone sent me all the frequencies for that. So I think I'm going to order that as a custom set. I'm just going to call it, the Earth Bell set, and just play and see what the Earth has been telling us what those frequencies do in a healing session and play around with that. Are forks more potent than bowls, or does that matter? A bowl, especially if you have like an 18-inch, just is a vibration that's going to vibrate the whole person. But bowls are not as exact in terms of a frequency. They're all over the place. So even like one bowl, you'll get all kinds of different tones out of it. So raw power-wise, harmonics, and creating nitric oxide release, a bowl's going to outperform a fork in most cases. But if someone has diseased liver and a gallbladder or intestinal problems, the specific frequencies that a tuning fork can do are better for sympathetic resonance for very specific things. So if you're also working with chakras and things of that nature, a chakra set would help bring the chakras in the sympathetic resonance more so than a bowl. That being said, you could also remember intention is everything. If you only had one crystal ball, you could say your job is to heal the root chakra, and you activate it, and that's your intent, and it is the tool, and it's doing the job that you told it to. And so you don't necessarily need it, but bowl, they have their advantages and disadvantages, but just the raw power of a bowl, especially if you have big ones, like it will resonate through the whole center when I have both the 22-inch and the 24-inch going, and everybody can feel it through the floor. And it's just amazing. A tuning fork can't do that. So potency versus, they're just different. Forks are definitely more travel friendly. So when I go to Buffalo, I'm taking like 5 bowls, and I'm picking a lot more forks for that concert because I just can't transport a 22-inch and a 24-inch bowl easily. I'm walking around like a penguin or whatnot, trying not to drop it. And I just don't like traveling with those, because that's like one bowl is like a $2,500 bowl when you get into those sizes, because if you order it, you're paying for the person. Unless you order directly from the manufacturer in India or China, wherever they come from, you're paying the shipping to get it to wherever you're going to buy it from. So there's a lady in Texas, for example, that resells them. She's a distributor. But if you're buying a 24-inch bowl from her, she's marking it up, and you're paying for that markup, which includes her shipping, plus her shipping to get it to you, plus her markup. So if you're going to get a really big bowl, take the chances and try to order directly through like Alibaba or one of those things, because you'll just save a ton. You might pay $800 plus shipping, where if you buy it here, it's going to be like $2,500. Because you're paying for all these extra shippings and markups and everything like that. But for smaller bowls, it's nice to hear what you're going to get. And Silver Sky Imports, if you go to their site, they have sound bits of every bowl there. Because China, you're not going to get to hear what you're ordering. You're just kind of hoping that it comes out and it's going to be kind of what you want. If you go through Silver Sky, they'll tell you what the tone is, and they'll have a sound bit of everything that you're going to buy, from gongs to bowls to chimes. And it's a nice way to do it if you want to make sure you hear what you're buying. Tuning forks, it doesn't matter so much, because the frequency is the frequency. They're always to 0.25% accuracy with MetaVibe anyway, or 0.025. It's a very, very thin threshold of variance when it comes to forks. Bowls, if you did get a True Tone 432, they're charging double or triple for it, because they just make them in these big centrifuges. I don't know what centrifuge isn't the right word. I forget what it's called, but it comes out and it always varies. So when they do happen to get a True Tone, they're usually sold at a huge premium, because they're hard to come by. They can't specify and make the bowl that accurate, unfortunately. Unfortunately for everybody. And if you were to get one bowl, other than a hand bowl, 18-inch is very versatile, because you can do a belly bowl technique. So you'll actually place the bowl on a person. 22-inch is a little bit better. It's almost too heavy for some clients, but you would put the bowl on the person, right on the solar plexus. And the way I like to do it is I use a wand, and I'll play the bowl while it's on their belly, and I start at their current age, and I work backwards, and you'll actually hear the bowl as you're on each age. When there's something that needs to be cleared from cellular memory from that age, the bowl will stop. It's just like, and you haven't changed anything. The bowl just stops because you're telling the bowl what its job is. You're going through each year and you're finding what needs to be healed. So then you'll just focus on that, and as the bowl does its thing, all of a sudden we'll start playing again, and then you go back to the next stage. And if you're intuitive, you'll even get hits of what happened there. Like my client just last night, I'm going back and I got to 28. I'm like, oh, it feels like there was a big physical trauma at 28, and she had a child at the age of 28 and it was a C-section or something. And almost, she has 8 children, and I picked out every single one. Well, not every single, I think I missed 2. But I didn't even know she had 8 children until the end. Because I asked, well, how many children do you have anyway? Because like I get another one of these physical traumas and it was another birth or whatnot. So the belly bowl is a great tool. You could do the same thing though with tuning forks. You could just take 2 tuning forks and activate them and go through and say what age. And then if you will just listen to the fork, especially after you used them a while, you'll know what it sounds like when it's on and when it's off. And if it's off, then you know there's something I need to work on this year. And the tuning forks and the tones are just another signal for you to know something isn't right, and to tap into your knowing and seeing what information you get. Wow, that's cool. Similar to emotion code. Emotion code is, I've never tried to do it on myself, but well, actually, I guess I have. The technique that I just mentioned is a modification of a carpitulation exercise that is done in the Hatan Karpai, which is one of the first initiations you go through in the Paco tradition, the nature mystic tradition of South America. And in that particular exercise, after you do a couple other things, you're taken to a cave, and you are told to start with your most recent memory. And you go back as far as you can remember. And each memory that comes up, if it creates a lightness for you, you savor it and you let it go into the cave. If it creates a heaviness for you, you acknowledge it and you let it go into the cave. Because the idea is you're in the womb of Pachamama, of Mother Earth. You're surrounded by that cave. And Pachamama naturally eats heavy energy. For her, it's fertilizer. So our hucha is fertilizer for her. So she loves it. It's like chocolate. Okay, so you go through each age going backwards until you get to as far back as you can. Ideally, you want to get to your birth if you're able to do that. And at that point, you then invite energetically your parents, and you say energetically, when you have the essence of your parents there, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. You did as best as you could to get me here right now. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then you allow their heaviness for whatever's going on with your parents to empty out into them, through you, into the cave. So you eat their hucha. Hucha is the word for heavy energy in the tradition I practice. And then after that, you're bestowed upon your metaphysical or your ancestral gifts for you to cultivate as a divine seed of potential. And there's a lot more things that go onto it. But you basically go through as far as you can. Let's see, can you do it self going through the age? You can, absolutely. I would do it in a cave. But if you suppose you could do it, let's see, I would try it. Sometimes it's hard to be a clear guide for yourself, just because we have a tendency to get in our own way. It's all about the energy though. So you can also go through each year and ask what needs to be cleared, or if you have a birthday coming up, from a progression standpoint, each day after your birthday represents 1 year progressed. So today's my birthday. Tomorrow is the day that represents my first year. And the second day is when I'm 2, and the third day is when I'm 3. So energetically, you're in the age of that year. So you could do it the opposite way, maybe easier for yourself when you have a birthday. If you're 50 years old, you would go for 50 days after your birthday, and each day you would meditate or get into a very receptive space and ask what from this age needs healing. And you may get a memory, you may get an energy, whatever it is, you then let that go. And maybe playing it out with some crystal tuners or Holy Host fork or something of that nature. So that would be another good way to do it for yourself, because it is sometimes trickier to work on yourself because we have a tendency to get in our own way. But not impossible, definitely not impossible. And Access gives a lot of tools for that too. So you can pod and pock yourself. That's an abbreviated version of the clearing statement. Pod is point of destruction, and pock is point of creation. And the whole clearing statement, which I won't say here, but the whole clearing statement is oftentimes abbreviated to pod and pock that. So if you felt the energy, you could just identify that energy. All that is, I destroy it and create it. Pod and pock. And that energetic will go in and start to unravel all the things that are holding limitations. And like every place where we believe as healers, we have trouble healing ourselves, but it's so easy to heal others. We destroy it and create that, pod and pock that. So that's an abbreviated version of that. Yeah, if you try it out, let me know how it works. I'm very interested to find out how you do that. Another way to do it too would be through pendulum work. When my wife and I were deciding where we were going to move, we actually took things and wrote down on cards, all the different cities that we might choose to live in. And we also had one for like the city that we don't have listed. And we would mix them up, put them face down. So my wife would mix them up, put them face down, and I would pendulum for it, and I would get the city, and then I would mix them up and have her do it, and we both got Westlake. So my idea is if you were to write down like yes and no and maybe something else, and you had someone mix them up for you, you could also trick yourself in a way of figuring out, is there something to be worked on here? Like if you think it's clear, but you pendulum for it, and or you can muscle test for it, but muscle testing too, because you're the one doing it, sometimes you get the answer that you expect. The greatest thing, and I'll end with this unless you guys have more questions before I'm done, that there's one concept in Access that revolutionized how I looked at problems. There's one part called boys, and boys represents a kid blowing bubbles into a bubble pipe. And they make the reference that we have a tendency to misidentify nucleated spheres as layers of an onion. So people are trying to fix themselves by going through the layers, trying to get to the core, right? When the whole time what's really happening is there's this one little energy. Might be when you were bullied on the bus when you were 3 years old and we're playing the victim for the first time ever. That's fueling all this energy that's recreating these experiences of being victims, or being a victim. And we're peeling layers and layers and layers, but what you're really doing is you're just popping a bubble and another one fills in. You're popping a bubble, another one fills in. You pop a bubble, another one fills in, because the real source of it all is all over here where there's this energy flow from a way past experience you might not even remember. So when you're pot and pocking and when you're clearing things, you're really asking, everything that's allowing this issue in my life to be held in place, I destroy and uncreate everything that's allowing that to be held. Every place where I've aligned and agreed with something, money is the root of all evil. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. You have to work hard. It's wrong to have a lot of money because people will judge you for it. All kinds of stuff. Every place where you've aligned and agreed with things like that, you might even realize that you're doing it because it was something said to you subconsciously when you were 5 years old. The clearing statement starts to unwind and undo all that without you having to re-dig through it and identify exactly what it was. So let's see. Got a pendulum in the mailing today. Woohoo. I was using it as a necklace. Very cool. The pendulums are just another tool to access your own knowing as an infinite being. And then, yes, on a pendulum or EFT, I've had good results with it. Cool. Yeah, I love EFT. EFT is a combination of EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprogramming, meridian tapping, and NLP. So it's like 3 things that they combine to make one fantastic modality. So it's really effective, in my opinion. Any final questions? We are over a little bit of time, so I'll give you 1 minute to type final questions here, if there is anything. And make sure if you didn't sign up for the Zoom via an email, if you just got the link from my online post, make sure to email me at hank@holistichealthandhealing.net or do the contact page. Make sure I have your email if you want the link for the video, if you want to watch this again. You're good? Perfect. Great. Well, thank you all so much. We say in Quechua, a Nike means thank you. We do it 3 times, one for each world, the lower world, middle world, and upper world. And hopefully you will make it out to the next one. And if you have a set you would like to know about, email me and maybe that's the next one that we'll do, because there's a lot of opportunity to go over forks. So whatever you guys want to hear next, planet forks or organ forks or anything like that, we can do those on the next call. All right, thank you everybody. I'll go ahead and end the meeting and I look forward to seeing you guys again.